What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. I am the Hobbyist, and today I'm going to be doing an update for my RC collection. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and a lot has changed since I did the last one. So I'm going to be going through all of the vehicles that I personally own in the RC collection. Some of the vehicles that I've shown on this channel don't belong to me. They belong to friends of mine or what have you. So I'm going to be showing you strictly just the ones I own, both two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, 1/10 scale, whatever. Just showing all of them to you. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm kind of going to go in order by the order that I got these RCs in. And I'm just going to do a brief overview. If you want more in depth, I've got videos on my channel for pretty much all of these, I think. But anyway, with that, I think it's only fair to start with the RC that started it all, which is this vintage Tamiya Mud Blaster monster truck. This originally belonged to my dad, and he gave it to me as my first ever hobby grade RC. And since I've owned it, it has gone through a couple different variations. One of the first things I did was make it work again, because it didn't work when I got it, and that was mainly due to the radio, as I eventually found out. But this truck, it's a lot of fun to drive. I don't drive it much anymore. It's more of a shelf queen. But if I take the body off, you'll see I originally had it set up with a modern Traxxas receiver and a Traxxas XL5 and Titan 12-turn motor in it originally. And I don't have that in there anymore. I'm trying to keep this as vintage as possible. So I have a vintage Traxxas receiver, a vintage Futaba ESC, and a vintage Kyosho motor in it, as well as a vintage Futaba servo. Almost everything on this truck is stock, with the exception of the shocks. It does have Tamiya oil dampers, which are period shocks. They aren't, you know, some aftermarket shocks, but they are the Tamiya oil dampening shocks. But yeah, this truck was the truck that started it all. It is a ton of fun to drive, and I don't do that much anymore. But with that one done, let's move on to the next one. Next up is my Losi Tenacity. Now, this was my first modern hobby grade RC. It's four-wheel drive, and it originally started as the Losi Tenacity T, which, if any of you were familiar, back in 2018, this came out as a truggy that was based off of the 10 short course truck platform. And it stayed like that for a while, but it has since been given a new life as a rally car. As you can see, Lancia Delta Integrale body. This truck has got way too many modifications to list out in this video, but just looking from the inside, you can see quite a bit that has been done. Different motor, different servo, bunch of aluminum parts. It is a really fun truck to drive, and it has since become this really awesome rally car. If you want more information on the upgrades, I'm sure I've got a video on my channel somewhere. If you go back, you can probably find it. But this is the RC that really solidified my love for the RC hobby, and I've been doing it ever since, and I've kept this ever since, you know, and I never plan on getting rid of it. It's just an absolute fun machine. So with that, let's move on to my next RC. The next RC on the list is my Force RC Hammerjaw. Now, if you've been a viewer of the channel, you know what this truck is. I originally bought it for $150, brand new, and it was purely just so that I could go rock crawling with my best friend who had recently bought an Axial Wraith. But $180 doesn't get you very far for a rock crawler, so I started modifying it, and it just kind of spiraled out of control. So now it's got four-wheel steering, it's got brushless servos, it's got a suck-down winch, it's got custom suspension, custom lighting. Everything on this truck is custom, but it all works very well. I've got 3D printed parts everywhere. I've got Holmes Hobby Electronics. It is a top-performing RC rock crawler. 2.2 Hyrax tires, dual-stage foams, massive articulation, as I mentioned already, four-wheel steering. This truck is probably the RC that I have spent the most time and money putting together, and for that, it is probably one of my favorites. I love all my RCs equally, but if I had to pick one that was my favorite, it would probably be this truck right here. It has just had so much of my time. I've spent almost 3 years building it, so it's very, very important to me. Underneath the body, you can see just a ton of wiring everywhere, but it's got custom parts everywhere, custom small battery tray, Hobbywing 1080 ESC, Holmes Hobby Crawlmaster Expert motor, custom transmission setup, custom gearing, Castle BEC. Just, this truck is, it's basically a Wraith on steroids. Much thinner, twin ladder frame chassis, but then still on the Axial AR60 axles. So it's just got a ton of crazy, crazy stuff on it. Custom suspension, as I mentioned. This truck overall is just the thing that you would fear on the crawler course because it performs like an absolute champion. And with that, let's move on to my next truck. So the next RC I got was actually from a friend of my mom's, and that is this. This is a Traxxas TMax Classic, or it was a Traxxas TMax Classic originally. And it's a nitro RC. It's got a 2.5 cc nitro engine in it. And when I got it, it was a ton of fun on its own. However, it had a bit of a durability problem. So I made some modifications. It's got RPM bulkheads, RPM arms, different tires, aluminum shock caps, upgraded transmission, upgraded servos, upgraded engine head with an OS glow plug. This TMax has had a ton of work done. And now I've had the problem with tuning it, but I was recently talking to my local hobby shop owner and he told me a tip on how to tune these things better. He used to race TMaxes, so he knows his stuff. But this was, it was a really good deal, and I don't drive it as much as I really should, but now that I know about how to tune it correctly, I hope to drive this more in the future, and I've got some stuff planned for this as well. So this is gonna be appearing on the channel much more often. But anyway, let's move on to the next truck. The next truck is this. This is my race truck. It is a Team Losi Racing SCTE 3.0 short course truck. It's 4-wheel drive, and it comes as a kit. I got it used, relatively pre-built, but I did have to put a lot of things into it, like the servo, the motor, ESC, things like that. But this has been my race truck for the past few years. You may have recognized this from way back on my channel. But this truck is an absolute blast to drive. I race it exclusively, so I never bash this truck. And that's fine by me because I've got other bashers that are fun to drive. But this thing is absolutely awesome. And it was the one that took me to second place overall at my local tracks RC racing series. So it is absolute blast. And I love driving 4-wheel drive short course truck just because there's something about it that sets it apart from the other racing classes that just makes it so special to me. So now let's move on to the next truck. The next truck on the list isn't actually a truck, it's a buggy. This is a Team Associated RC 8.2E 1/8 scale racing buggy kit. I got this used off of Facebook Marketplace for a fantastic deal, and I was looking for another basher, and this one definitely stepped up to the challenge. And I have not done a lot to it. When I bought it, it didn't have a wing or a body, so I put those on. I custom painted the body, obviously, but it came with these. These are Duratrax lockup C2 tires. Under the body, it came with a Castle Mamba Monster X and a 2200 kV Castle brushless motor. So it is just a ton of power, and it was such a fantastic deal. I could not pass it up. And this is now my top basher vehicle. The Tenacity originally filled those shoes, but once I got this, I was ready to do some new stuff with the Tenacity. And this is really what allowed me to do that, because I still wanted an off-road basher, and this thing definitely steps up to the plate. It is an absolute blast to drive. It's got a top speed of around 50 miles an hour. And again, I haven't done a whole lot to it. The wing, the body, I have swapped the servos around a few times, and then these aluminum chassis braces. That's about it. So it's a ton of fun to drive, and I absolutely love it. But this is not the only RC I got in that deal. So when I bought the RC8, I was also given the opportunity to get an Arma Granite Voltage as a freebie, and that is this right here. Now it's kind of broken at the moment, and it was broken when I got it. None of the electronics worked, and it was missing a drive shaft. So once I got that working, I decided to do some slight modifications, and it's currently in pieces because I broke it recently. What I did was I put the Traxxas brush system that was originally in the Mud Blaster into this. I put on some aluminum shocks that I had lying around, which they're not the right size. As you can see, the back sticks up way higher than the front does, and when you compress the shocks, the chassis doesn't even touch the ground, so that's a bit of an issue. But then one of the special things about this is I custom 3D printed this battery tray that sits on top so that it can accept a 7-cell nickel metal hydride battery. And as of right now, it works pretty well. I'm waiting for a new receiver because I broke the receiver in this. So I'm going to just get a Spectrum one and connect it to my Spectrum DX5C, which is what I run pretty much all my RCs off of. But this was kind of a freebie and something that I kind of designed to be driven by you know, friends or my younger siblings when they feel like driving when I'm driving my RCs. But with that, let's move on to the next one. Remember guys, if there's anything specific you want to know about any of these RCs I'm talking about, I have dedicated videos for them on my channel. But my next one is much smaller. It's an Axial SCX24, and I got this fairly recently, and it's a little mini indoor crawler. I don't crawl it outside, and I have done quite a few modifications to it. It's got RC four-wheel drive inner fenders, RC four-wheel drive rock sliders, hot racing shocks, Trio brass covers. It's got an upgraded servo, and I did a custom lighting system for it as well as bed lining the bed because that just looks cool. But this is kind of one that you don't see on the channel very often, although I wish I could put it on the channel more often, and I'll try my best to. But it's a fun little truck, and again, I have a dedicated video on all the stuff that is on here. But let's move on to my final truck. If you've been watching the channel, you know it. This is my Axial SCX103. I got this as a kit about a year and a half ago, somewhere around there. And I built every single part of this truck on the channel. So if you go back, I have a whole playlist dedicated to building this truck up. And it was a ton of fun to build, got it as the kit. And it's had quite a few modifications. I've got 3D printed scale accessories, RC four-wheel drive bumpers, Trio aluminum parts absolutely everywhere. This is my dedicated trail truck. I could have gone for a more performance outlook on this truck, but since I have the Hammerjaw, I wanted something that looked a bit more scale, so I went the more realistic side for this truck. This has been my most recent truck. I try to keep it as clean as possible, so I try to not tip it over a whole lot. So as you can see, the body is still in pretty good condition, even though I drive it fairly often. But it's an absolute blast to drive, and I really, really love it. I actually got this based on a recommendation from a viewer. So thank you to that viewer for recommending me this truck. It was an absolute blast, and I love this truck. It's a ton of fun. And with that, guys, that is it for all of the RCs in my personal collection. Now, you may have seen some other ones, such as this Element RC Gatekeeper, or this Axial Unimog, or the Arma Typhon, or there's a Techno back there as well. None of those belong to me. Those belong to my dad. So they weren't featured in this video, but if you have ever recognized them, they're still here, but they don't belong to me. With that, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment in the section below for what videos you'd like to see next. As I mentioned before, I have dedicated videos on pretty much all of the RCs that I spoke about today on my channel, so you can check those out if you're interested in them. But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.